My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I bought a house a few months ago and moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Just to be clear now, apparently he had been allowing use of his driveway to his disabled neighbor lady largely because street parking is extremely limited and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. What I am saying is unless you have a driveway you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away, and that's the best case scenario. I put disabled in quotation marks because the lady in question is just really overweight and I am not sure if that counts as disabled. Obviously I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers could not stand still on the busy road too long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry enormous lady opened the door. I told her to move the car and she immediately started arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out. I moved in and no, it is not fine, and to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did. I ended up seeing her walking back half an hour later completely wet with sweat. Now a few days later I went back to work and lo and behold, the SUV is parked in my driveway again. I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before this lady opens the door, again, visibly angry. I tell her to move her car, my driveway is not public parking. She protests saying her ankles can't take walking the distance and claims I can easily walk. I tell her that while that might be true, it's my goddamn driveway and I want to park there myself. Again she moves her car, Again I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago, and this time she would not open her door. I got tired of it and had her SUV towed. She of course came to my house to scream at me. I told her to get the hell off my property. A few days later I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it did not happen again. I have since been getting dirty looks from her and one other neighbor, and when I told my mom she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too. She clearly struggles with the walk after all. My friend came to me yesterday at lunch with screenshots of my boyfriend's Tinder profile. The pictures were all old photos, so I confronted him immediately expecting to hear something like,
"Yeah."
I forgot to delete that. Which is cool. He denied being on Tinder at all, and my friend suggested that she make an account, set it to his specifications, and see if he turns up. And there's his profile. So, this means that my boyfriend has been active on Tinder within the past 2 weeks. I confronted him with this, and he changed his story. Now he's saying that his friend has been using his account. He shows me his phone and says, "Look, I have nothing to hide." And of course the app is deleted. So I take his phone, download Tinder, log in with his Facebook and see that he has been active, albeit infrequently. There was one girl that he tried to meet up with back in May when I was out of town. The girl gave him her phone number, and even though he deleted whatever messages they exchanged, I still saw that he had her saved in his contacts. So that's about everything that I know. He either cheated on me or planned on cheating on me while I went out of town, and I'm sure this isn't the only time it's happened. This relationship is pretty much over. He is swearing up and down that it's not true. He doesn't use Tinder and he doesn't know this girl. I'm going crazy with how much he's outright lying. He seems so sincere, but I know what I saw. I can't listen to him deny this one more time. This blew up while I was away. I'm sorry I won't be able to respond to every comment. So I did some stuff that was kind of petty and stupid today. I made a fake Tinder account, matched with my boyfriend. And he starts messaging me and immediately asks me to meet him for a drink. We agree to meet by a fountain in the center of my town, and I pack up all of his stuff in a tote bag, put on a great outfit and went to the fountain. I stood kind of out of the way of the fountain in the shadows where I could watch the street that I knew he'd be arriving from. I was devastated, but I figured this way I could catch him without a doubt and end things quickly. All the time, he's messaging this girl on Tinder. But he didn't show up. 2 of his roommates did. We didn't speak, I don't know them well, but they watched me for a while. Figured out what was going on after a few more Tinder messages, and left quickly. So I wait a few minutes and I call my boyfriend and ask him where he's at. He says he's just gotten off of work and he's going to meet his roommate for a drink. I confront him with the fake Tinder profile and he's dumbstruck and furious with his roommate, who he swears up and down is behind all of this. I'm at home now, just emotionally exhausted and confused. Whatever is going on with his roommates is super sketchy and creepy. Up until this point my boyfriend and I had a great relationship. Really, no red flags anywhere. If I had already been suspicious that he was cheating, this would be a much easier break for me. The most recent message on his Tinder account, when I checked it yesterday, was sent to a girl he had matched with before we met. It said, "Would you want to meet up with my friend?" My boyfriend is the kind of person whose iPhone passcode is 0000. I wouldn't be surprised if his roommates did know all of his passwords. So, his Tinder account is still matched with my fake profile. To me, that indicates that he probably isn't the person operating the Tinder profile. If it were him, wouldn't he have blocked the fake profile immediately? A lot of people have said that he probably sent his roommates to check things out for him. I can't write that off entirely, but my gut says that it isn't true. I just don't think it's very likely. When it comes to his roommates, I'm very concerned that they have been using his profile to trick women into meeting with them. The fact that his profile hasn't been deleted makes me worry that my boyfriend is in on this. So that's about where I'm at right now. I'm worried that all of them are working together to, at best, scam women, at worst, assault them, and my boyfriend is at least passively involved. Either way, I feel some responsibility to do a little more digging. My husband, Asian, and I, American, welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, thank God, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday, I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, cause the house was a mess, y'all. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son. Then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go inside the kitchen and prepare something, anything long as it's homemade. I said fine, then went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an expected visit from them? And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they'd missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts, that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder, and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted.